Hello and welcome to Firstpost Live, where we bring you the day's top 4 stories from across the world. I am Gripen Garland, live from the Firstpost studios. Let's begin with the headlines. Chinese and US officials will meet in Malaysia next week for trade talks as the world's two largest economies look to cool tensions from their long-running tariff war. North Korea says it tested a new cutting-edge hypersonic missile system days before world leaders, including US President Donald Trump, arrive in South Korea for a major summit. Israel's Supreme Court delays a hearing on a petition seeking independent access for foreign journalists to Gaza as restrictions on media coverage persist since the war began in 2023. Indonesia and Brazil sign a series of agreements on oil, gas, electricity and technology in Jakarta to strengthen trade and economic cooperation as both nations look to expand into new markets. And Tesla recalls more than 63,000 Cybertrucks in the US after regulators say the front parking lights are too bright and could impair oncoming drivers. We begin with the latest developments on Russia-Ukraine war. US President Donald Trump has rolled out what he called tremendous sanctions on Russian oil giants. The decision came amid a fresh wave of Russian strikes on Ukrainian cities, a Russian nuclear drill overseen by President Putin himself, and Ukraine seeking new military support from Sweden. At the White House, President Trump slapped sweeping sanctions on Russia's two largest oil companies, calling it a direct response to Moscow's refusal to end the Ukraine war. The sanctions freeze all US assets off the firms and bar American entities from doing business with them. Trump said he had good conversations with President Putin, but they don't go anywhere. He added he still hopes the measures will be short-lived if peace talks resume. This move follows the collapse for planned Trump-Putin summit in Budapest.
It's a very big day in terms of what we're doing. Look, these are tremendous sanctions. These are very big. Those are against their two big oil companies, and we hope that they won't be on for long. We hope that the war will be settled. Well, I think that in terms of honesty, the only thing I can say is every time I speak with Vladimir, I have good conversations, and then they don't go anywhere. They just don't go anywhere.
Trump's sanction offensive came as Russia unleashed one of its heaviest attacks on Ukraine in weeks on Wednesday. Drones and missiles tore through cities including Kyiv and Kharkiv, killing at least 7 people, 2 of them children. Ukraine said Russian drones also hit a kindergarten in Kharkiv.
Grandpa called to ask where Nastya is. I told him that she was in class. He mentioned the attacks and I dropped the bags and ran away. Firstly, I saw the burnt car, and then I saw the direct hit, the roof burning, everything inside burning. To be honest, I made my way through the rescuers to get to the child. I understand everything. But you know, a mother would jump and pull her child out of the fire.
As the Ukrainian emergency crews battled the fires, the Russian president appeared on state television overseeing scheduled nuclear readiness drills. Meanwhile, on Wednesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky landed in Sweden and signed a letter of intent with Swedish Prime Minister to purchase up to 150 Gripen fighter jets. Zelensky toured the manufacturing site of the fighter jet maker. In fact, during the visit, he also got into the cockpit of one of the jets and was briefed about it by company officials. Sweden called it the start of long-term cooperation on air defense with Ukraine. And Zelensky said he hopes Ukrainian pilots can begin using the jets next year. Earlier, Zelensky confirmed that Trump had proposed freezing the conflict along the current front lines. The Ukrainian leader called the plan a good compromise, but one he doubts Putin would accept. Listen in.
After our conversation, you saw messages, public messages from Trump. He proposed stay where we stay and begin conversation. I think that was good compromise, but I'm not sure that Putin will support it. And I said it to President. Russia is not stopping, and that's why we have to do it together. all of us, European partners, together with the United States, the pressure on Putin. He attacked, I've got the last details, we didn't know because we've been in the jet. They attacked kindergarten in the center of Kharkiv, and God bless all the children.
For now, Russia has said it remains immune to the latest US sanctions. But in a single day, the US tightened its economic screws on Russia. Moscow flexed its nuclear muscle, and Ukraine raced to strengthen its sky defenses. Moving on to Washington. The United States has expanded its anti-drug operation, striking 2 boats this week that it says were carrying narcotics. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth confirmed that American forces carried out an airstrike on a vessel in the Pacific Ocean on Wednesday, killing 3 people suspected of drug trafficking. The strike came a day after another boat was targeted in the same region, resulting in 2 deaths. According to Hegseth, both vessels were operating along known drug trafficking routes in international waters. The recent strikes were the first to take place in the Pacific Ocean. Previous operations have mostly occurred in the Caribbean Sea, particularly near Venezuela. A short video released by the Defense Secretary showed a small boat loaded with brown packages believed to contain narcotics moving through open waters before being hit by an airstrike and catching fire. In a post on Truth Social, Hegseth described the ongoing anti-drug operations as a fight against organizations that, in his words, wage war. Hegseth also equated the alleged drug traffickers to Al-Qaeda, the terror group that conducted the attacks on the U.S. on September 11, 2001. President Donald Trump later told reporters that he has the legal authority to continue striking suspected drug boats.
These drugs coming in, they killed 300,000 Americans last year, and that gives you legal authority. We have a national security, really, I will say this, when you look at the people we're dealing with, and we know them, we know the people coming in, we know the boats, we know everything else, we're allowed to do it. It's in international waters. If we don't do it, we're going to lose hundreds of thousands of people. Now, they'll be coming in by land a little bit more because they're not coming in by boat anymore. There are no boats in the water.
The U.S. has now conducted 9 confirmed airstrikes against suspected drug smuggling vessels since September 2, with at least 37 people killed. A recent strike targeted a semi-submersible vessel in the Caribbean. 2 survivors from an earlier attack were returned to Colombia and Ecuador. Now, U.S. officials have not provided details on the identities of those killed or which trafficking organizations they were allegedly linked to. And the reasons for expanding operations into the Pacific have also not been made public. According to a report, the Central Intelligence Agency is providing most of the intelligence used to identify targets for these airstrikes. Experts say that this could limit public access to information about how those targets are selected. The developments come amid growing tension between the Trump administration and the Colombian as well as the Venezuelan government. Earlier, President Trump referred to Petro as a thug and accused him of encouraging drug production.
Thug and bad guy. He's a guy that is making a lot of drugs. We've just, as of today, stopped all payments going to Colombia, the country Colombia. Also, the school Colombia. No, we settled. We made a settlement with him. But no, he's a thug, and he's a bad guy, and he's hurt his country very badly.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also branded Petro as a lunatic. President Petro responded by announcing that he would pursue legal action in U.S. courts against the American president's remarks. Both Colombia and Ecuador have extensive coastlines on the Pacific Ocean, which experts say are used as transit routes for drugs heading north towards the United States. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration estimates that most of the cocaine bound for American cities now moves through the Pacific rather than the Caribbean. For now, Hegseth has indicated that these strikes will continue. And as the U.S. broadened its strikes from the Caribbean into the Pacific, what remains to be seen is whether this expansion represents a short-term campaign or the start of a longer operation. Moving on. India has once again called out Pakistan for its hypocrisy at the United Nations. This time, Pakistan was rebuked at the World Forum for attempting to legitimize cross-border terrorism under the guise of a freedom struggle. Speaking at an interactive dialogue at the UN, Pakistan's representative said that nations should distinguish between terrorism and the exercise of legitimate right of the people to resist foreign to occupation. The Pakistani representative also tried to misinterpret international law during the session. He falsely claimed, quote-unquote, that the distinction between terrorism and freedom struggle is duly observed in international law. But this was debunked by the Indian side. Replying to Pakistan's representative, Raghu Puri, India's first secretary at India's permanent mission to the UN, denounced the remark, calling it double-speak and hypocrisy. Puri described Pakistan a well-known epicenter of terrorism with established links to multiple attacks across the world targeting innocent civilians.
My delegation condemns yet another futile attempt by a member state to misuse this platform to propagate misinformation and disinformation. The international community stands witness to Pakistan's sponsorship of cross-border terrorism and its use of terrorism as a tool of state policy directed against India. Peddling lies and making false equivalences will not help them achieve their goals, whatever they may be. I reiterate that the Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir was, is, and will always remain an integral part of India. And the only unresolved issue is the vacation by Pakistan of illegally occupied parts of Indian territory of Jammu and Kashmir.
Puri defended Operation Sindoor, which India launched in May this year, targeting terror bases in Pakistan. He urged Islamabad to stop preaching sermons at the UN and look at its own record, adding that Pakistan must cease its cross-border attacks that have disproportionately targeted civilians.
The brutal targeted attacks carried out by Pakistani trade terrorists, which claimed the lives of 26 innocent civilians in Pahalgam on 22nd April 2025, have not been forgotten by the world. India's legitimate right to defend itself was measured and non-escalatory in order to protect our people against terrorism and bring the organizers and perpetrators to justice, as was articulated in the UN Security Council's press statement that was released condemning this very attack. In contrast, Pakistan deliberately targeted our borders, villages, resulting in civilian deaths, including that of children. Pakistan must look itself in the mirror, stop preaching sermons at this forum, and act to protect children within its own borders and stop targeting women and children across the borders.
The Indian diplomat accused Pakistan of exploiting claims of Islamophobia to cover up its own abuses, adding that it continues to rank among the worst human rights offenders.
This country has normalized dehumanizing its ethnic and religious minorities, its genocide of its own civilians in 71 in erstwhile East Pakistan, its interference in Afghanistan, leading to displacement and killing of people, and its use of terrorism as state policy exposes its duplicity and futile attempts to take cover of Islamophobia to hide its atrocities. Pakistan's decade-old institutionalized persecution of Hindu, Christian, and Ahmadiyya minority communities with impunity in the name of religion continues unabated and is yet another example of its double standards.
For nearly 2 decades, negotiations on the Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism proposed by India have stalled. This is due to objections from Pakistan and a small group of countries seeking to categorize certain terrorist groups as freedom fighters. In fact, India has time and again also reiterated that there can be no justification under any law or ideology for the use of terror as a political tool. India is planning to tighten its artificial intelligence rules to curb the growing threat of deepfakes and misinformation. The Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has proposed key changes to the IT Rules 2021, focusing on stricter labeling, traceability, and accountability for AI-generated content. According to the draft amendments, the changes aim to ensure that AI-generated content is clearly labeled and identifiable by the public. Officials say the move was necessary as synthetic media, including fake videos, audio clips, and images have recently gone viral, causing confusion and damaging reputations. The proposed amendments to the IT Rules 2021 introduce a clear definition of synthetically generated information, meaning any content created or altered using computer resources in a way that appears authentic. Under the draft, social media platforms and AI firms such as Meta, X, Google, and OpenAI will have to ensure visible labeling or audible notices on all AI-generated media. The label must also convert at least 10% of a visual display or the first 10% of an audio clip. Platforms will also be required to ask users whether their upload content is AI-generated and use reasonable technical checks to verify these declarations. Under the revised framework, any authorized official seeking content removal will now be required to provide 3 specific details in their notice. The first, the legal basis and statutory provision being invoked. Second, the nature of the unlawful act. And third, the precise URL identifier or electronic location of the content. In a brief note, the IT ministry said the recent incidents of deepfake videos and synthetic media have shown how generative AI can be weaponized to spread misinformation, manipulate elections, or commit fraud. The ministry also warned that such content can cause serious harm, from damaging personal reputations to fueling political and communal tensions.
In Parliament, as well as many other fora, people have demanded that something should be done about the deepfakes which are harming society. People using some prominent person's image and creating deepfakes which are then affecting their personal lives, privacy, as well as the various misconceptions in society. So the step we have taken is to make sure that users get to know whether something is synthetic or real. Once users know, they can take a call in democracy. But it's important that users know what is real. That distinction will be led through mandatory data labeling.
India, home to over 900 million internet users, is especially vulnerable due to its vast and diverse online population. Officials said the new rules aim to strengthen due diligence obligations for social media intermediaries and AI developers. The proposed rules are part of a wider global push to regulate artificial intelligence. Both the European Union and China have already introduced mandatory labeling for AI-generated content. Meanwhile, in India, the ministry has launched an online platform called Sahyog, a centralized system for sending content removal notices to platforms like X and Facebook. The amendments seek to promote user awareness, enhance accountability, and safeguard users while allowing room for innovation and in AI technology. The government has invited public and industry feedback on the draft amendments until November 6, 2025. India's growing AI market is attracting global tech players too. OpenAI and Anthropic have both announced plans to open offices in India this year. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman earlier said that India is now the company's second largest market by users, and usage of ChatGPT has grown 4-fold in the past year. With the proposed AI amendments, India is moving towards a more accountable and transparent digital ecosystem. While the rules are still under consultation, they reflect the government's growing urgency to curb the misuse of AI and the spread of deepfakes before they cause greater social or political harm. That's all for today. Thank you for joining us. I am Gurshin Galan, and we'll see you right back here at the same time. Until then, stay informed and